Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to the season finale of the Middle of the Pack Racing League GTE League for 2026 as brought to you on the Premier Sim Racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. That's right, you heard it correct ladies and gentlemen, we are here for round number 8 of 8 in our GTE League and what a round we have in store. It is rain aplenty, it is night time, and we have made our way all the way to Belgium for the venerable Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. Home, of course, the annual 24 Hours of Spa. It is a circuit like no other when it marries together an absolute eclectic mix of 19 corners over its 4.35 mile length, and whilst it may no longer be the long, roaring tour for the Ardennes Forest it once was all those many years ago, for good reasons of course, particularly for safety and ensuring that drivers make it to the finish line, it is a circuit which is a staple of international motorsport. Whether it be GT racing, open wheel racing, you name it, it races here as long as it's a road or racing category, and there's nothing quite like delivering a victory in the Belgian forest. But who exactly is going to put it together over the course of its 3 unique sectors, which are a test of every aspect of driver's ability, whether it be low speed cornering, medium speed direction changes, high speed aggression, and of course some very long straights. And put it all together, it is the perfect circuit to crown our champion's hat as we bring the curtain down what's been an absolutely brilliant season. And of course we do have to crown not just our overall drivers champions in both the Pro and Pro-Am categories today, but also we need to do so in the Euro Cup. But who exactly will they be? Well, that's what we're here to find out as we bring you all the racing action as if it were live. Indeed, you're tuning in today to a post-round broadcast recorded for your viewing pleasure, and all the racing action you see, it's not live, it actually occurred back on Wednesday the 3rd of June 2026, but we're bringing it to you as if it were live today, this Saturday the 13th of June, and therefore we do not know who is going to be the fastest in practice, which is currently ongoing in the background, with only approximately 7 minutes to go before we start to make our way to the grid, and when we do so, it nicely brings us onto our schedule, because we do not know the outcome of our 60-minute feature race, the second of our 2 feature races over the course of this season. No qualifying session today, and we'll give you a reminder exactly how we set in the grid for qualifying purposes very shortly. But as we can see, our times in Eastern Daylight Time EDT, or Universal Coordinate Time -4, and in approximately 7 minutes time at 8:10 this evening, we will be going to the grid for our one and only feature race to crown our champions. But where are my manners? Allow me to welcome you to this post-round broadcast from the circuit side as you catch all the racing action and the only place you can do so on a weekly basis for the Middle of the Pack Racing League GTE League Series. And of course, youtube.com and search for Paul Walsh Productions or PWP. And in the commentary booth, you have myself. My name is Paul Walsh, uninitiated, and I shall be your host and commentator as we bring the season to a close. But as we make our way into this season finale round, well, let's give you a recap of the story so far, and particularly what happened last time out at Silverstone in the United Kingdom. For as we can see, we have travelled around the globe. The first 4 rounds were the US Cup, all the way back from rounds 1 through to 4, with our 3 sprints at Road Atlanta, Watkins Glen and Road America, giving way to our feature race finale for the US Cup in round 4 at Sebring. And that was on 25th of February through to the 8th of April, and then we did take a brief breather, albeit no longer than our typical 2-week gap between each and every round, and we made our way all the way from the United States to America and to the European continent. We began the Euro Cup at Barcelona in Spain back on the 22nd of April for the sprint that opened it up. Then we made our way to Italy for Imola on the 6th of May. And then last time out, we made our way to the home of British motorsport, the home of the British Drivers Racing Club Association. That'd be none other than the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit on the 20th of May. And what exactly went down there in round number 7? Well, the big theme was the fact that whilst we did have quite a limited grid, 6 drivers may have made the way to the British tarmac. But I'll tell you one thing, for 6 drivers, did they not do half bad in making sure the circuit seemed far more populated than it really was, because in qualifying, well, it was incredibly tight. Now, Ryan Otis would disagree with you in the fact he took pole position by 6.5 tenths. He really did dominate the qualifying session ahead of Shajee Zuhair. However, the battle for second place in qualifying was extremely close between Zuhair and James Logsdon, with Zuhair beating his rival throughout multiple seasons in the Middle Pack Racing League by only 6 thousandths of a second. And a further 7 tenths behind, it was another tight fight for 4th place between Jermaine Warren and Julian Jones, with Jermaine Warren just taking it by a 10th. And in completing the starting order, the sole Pro-Am representative last time out, it was none other than Glenn Bratton. And, well, he put together a decent lap and getting closer and closer to the pace of Warren and Jones with each and every lap turned. But when we did go racing, well, the leading trio of Otis, Zuhair and Logsdon made an early break from the rest of the field, and we did see the battle for first place take priority initially, but then suddenly on lap number 2, the batting really erupted between Zuhair and Logsdon, and it gave Ryan Otis the opportunity to just charge away. But it would be a brilliant battle for second place that would never see the gap between Zuhair and Logsdon extend more than 1.3 seconds over its totality, and it would be Logsdon who'd get the upper hand in the end, bringing home that second place, but only 6/10 of the finish line ahead of Zuhair. But for Ryan Otis, well, he just bolted away and set a fastest lap early on in the session, which almost was as quick as his pole lap in qualifying. He took the win by 10.8 seconds. And as for the battle between Jermaine Warren and now then Julian Jones, where it was a battle made on not just pace, but also consistency, or should we say inconsistencies. And in the end, there was a major lock-up into the pit lane for Jermaine Warren, lap 17. It saw him in the spin, hit the barrier, and also he picked up an unsafe pit entry, and therefore, with it, a stop and hold, plus also a black flag drive-through penalty for the fact he picked up too many instant points, and it meant that it was all over to Julian Jones to be able to bring home that 4th place, and Glenn Bratton, despite a spin of his own, would take 5th, with Jermaine Warren end up in 6th place. And what around it was indeed. It was full of twists and turns. We could not forget it. And well, as we come into this season finale, we've got quite a few drivers here today, and we look forward to seeing what drama may unfold right at the very end as we bring the curtain down, because it's time for our Spa-Francorchamps round, and it's time for our second feature race round and our final feature race round of the season. But many of you will be asking, okay, those are the headlines from Silverstone. What exactly can we expect then when it comes to none other than what is our championship standings? Well, of course, we start with the overall Drivers' Championship standings, and it was none other than James Logsdon's result at 2nd place that has meant he stayed on top in the pro class, as we can see on the left-hand side, ahead of Ryan Otis now by 21 points. And while Ryan Otis tied with Shajee Zuhair, understandably, he is ahead on countback, given the fact that Ryan Otis does have 3 wins to no wins this season for Shajee Zuhair. But James Logsdon right now is truly the favourite, and after taking that 2nd place at Silverstone by 0.6 seconds, well, that result absolutely pivotal in ensuring he will feel very comfortable coming into this season finale. So for Ryan Otis, he's got to try and go for the win, and hope that Logsdon does not do well at all today. I'd ideally like Logsdon to retire from the race, or at least finish right towards the back to give himself the best opportunity to try and steal that crown away. But will Shajee Zuhair spring back right at the end? Can he find a way to close the gap to Ryan Otis on pace, and in doing so, potentially take home that 2nd place instead, or even steal the win for himself? Outside the top 3, not able to now usurp what would be James Logsdon for the championship crown. Taylor Bookout sits on 219 points. Back once again today, 18 points ahead of Julian Jones. Then we do see Jermaine Warren just outside the top 5 there, a further, what is 13 points adrift. Sitting in 7th, it's Matthew Morehart, 134 points, 2 ahead of Chad Henson, with Matt Best there in 9th on 151, and Eric Lagai completing the top 10 on 149. Gabriel Ferrero, Blake Phillips, Jason Landry, Edwin Offred, and David Addy complete the Pro Class Drivers' Championship standings. But as for the overall Pro-Am Drivers' Championship standings, whilst taking his first win of the season last time out, Glenn Bratton on 216 points, now 2 ahead of Tom Bryce. Tom Bryce was not able to make it to Silverstone, so Bratton had an open goal opportunity to take his first win, and he accepts it gladly. But let's also remember the fact that Glenn Bratton's pace was on many of the pro drivers midway through the race, as he pushed harder and harder in his BMW, and unfortunately a couple of mistakes prevented him from potentially taking the fight to Julian Jones. But it was a sight to be seen to see how far he's come in his BMW, and with Bryce back today, well, I suspect we are going to see the two of them go toe-to-toe all the way to the checkered flag. With only 2 points separating them, it could come down to a tie-break. And should it do so, well, it would be Tom Bryce who would take the crown, given the fact he already has 3 wins this season in the Pro-Am class compared to Glenn Bratton's single win, and therefore it does mean that Bryce right now does hold the keys if he ties up, but otherwise he needs to finish ahead of Bratton as a minimum. Donald Seepeck sits in 3rd on 148 points, not seen for the last couple of rounds, but he's still comfortably in 3rd ahead of Mark Senegal, with Roger Ganesh, Carl Peterson and Billman DaCosta completing the Pro-Am class standings. But as for the Euro Cup standings, of course, there have been this separate prize available for what will be the final 4 rounds of the season, and all the points made in each and every of our final 4 rounds are all added up. There's no drop scores here, unlike the single drop score for the overall Drivers' Championships. And as we can see in the Pro class, it is Ryan Otis who leads by 17 points ahead of James Logsdon, and is very much looking to be the favourite to take it home, presuming he can make it another win and therefore make it what would be 3 in a row. But we'll have to wait and see where he's able to do so, because Logsdon will let me try to bite back, much like he did all the way back at Catalonia with that brilliant race start, gifting him the opportunity of the victory. And then 5 points behind Shajee Zuhair on 132 points. It's a sizable gap to Matthew Morehart, who sits in 4th ahead of Julian Jones, but only 7 points. And then we do have Jermaine Warren there in 6th place, ahead of Taylor Bookout, only by a single point. And Eric Lagai and Matt Best complete the standings. As for the Pro-Am class, where it's Glenn Bratton, after attending Silverstone and bringing home the winner's points versus Tom Bryce, who was not able to make it, Bratton now does have a comfortable advantage, and it would take him to retire from this round for Bryce to be potentially be able to level the score, if not usurp him, right at the very end. So it's all looking good for Glenn Bratton. But that's how the standings stand after 7 rounds of racing. And of course, as we head into this season finale round, let's tell you a little bit more about our host circuit for today. Here's the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps Grand Prix pit layout, located near the village and municipality of Stavelot in the Liège province of the Wallonian region of Belgium. A huge thank you to iRacing.com, not just the brilliant simulator, but the absolutely fantastic track maps contained within it. Now, this variant of the circuit, of course, introduced in what was the late 2000s, whereby essentially the pit lane was dissected into 2. Of course, we can run the full pit lane, the endurance pit lane, which will see drivers coming in on the bus stop chicane and essentially exit out onto Radion. But the Grand Prix pit lane, used for events such as Formula 1 and more national-focused events, and particularly for smaller GT grids, well, we'll see our drivers come in at the bus stop chicane and make the way out parallel to the exit of the La Source hairpin at turn number 1. And as our drivers roar the way around this circuit, well, we need to recap all 19 corners. They'll make their way into a La Source hairpin to open up the lap, after which they'll then power their way flat out into Eau Rouge and Radion. Turns 2, 3 and 4, that incredible high speed, high stakes, high thrill sequence of corners as they go left, right, left, and then power their way onto the Kemmel Straight. That'll be the first sector complete as they then make their way into Lake Orme at turns 5 and 6, the medium speed chicane, that then gives way to Malmedy at turn number 7, and down the hill they'll roar in towards Ravage. The hairpin that's downhill completely off camber, and it never seems to end until you finally see the exit curb. Coming out, our drivers need to quickly get to the right as they need to open up No Name Corner, also known as X-Bend in reference to Jackie X, and as they come through the downhill left-hander, it's still downhill even more through this middle sector as they head through Puron. The fast double left-hander turns 10 and 11, where it's all about managing the off-camber nature of the corner and making sure not to understeer too wide. Get that absolutely right, they'll make their way through the Fandra chicane at turns 12 and 13, medium speed apex is abound, and then in towards Stavelot 1 at turn 14, and then Stavelot 2, they'll begin the final sector, also known as Curve de Paul Ferry at turn 15, before making their way all the way flat out up towards Blanchimont at turn 17, the fast left-hander in the dry, completely flat out, but I suspect with the wet weather conditions we see here, we'll see some lifts and perhaps even some braking it into the very tricky corner, while they make their way to the heaviest braking out of all, the bus stop chicane at turns 18 and 19, and coming out to that, they'll complete the lap, or alternatively, finally see the checkered flag. But a quick reminder of the rules before we go racing, because we can't go racing without them. Setup-wise, drivers are running a fixed setup as provided by the Middle of the Pack Racing League Administration, and fuel loads have been restricted to 50%. In terms of our feature race, how do we set the grid? Well, we set it based on a class reverse grid, and that's coming from the latest Drivers' Championship standings. So therefore, we will see all the drivers take to the grid, and they will be inverted, and it will be the pros ahead of the Pro-Ams. So all of the pros will start together at the front, and then we'll see the Pro-Ams line up behind them in that reverse championship order. In the overall Drivers' Championship, we should be clear, not the Euro Cup standings. Now, the race shall start by a rolling start, as is the addition of the Middle of the Pack Racing League GTE League, and each driver has 2 fast repairs available should they need to use them. And the driver shall receive a drive-free penalty if they accumulate 10 instant points. Indeed, we may be seeing the race a bit longer, 60 minutes today, but we do not increase the number of instant points available. Indeed, they've got to be on their best possible behaviour. But we make our way back to circuit side, ladies and gentlemen. And as we do, well, the rain definitely falling, but one thing that's definitely not falling right now is the opportunity for absolutely fantastic racing. It's never falling away, it's always here to stay. And here we go as we make our way to the grid, and let's take a look at how they all line up. And we'll hopefully get the grid in the correct order, and indeed we do there. Brilliant CR overlay working as expected, and it is going to be a reverse pro grid at pole position there for Matthew Morhart, the privateer, who'll be joined on the front row of the grid by Jermaine Warren from Middle of the Pack Racing. Then we will see behind the BMW M8 driver, it will be Julian Jones in his Ford GT, the EcoBoost machine starting in third, and he'll be joined on that second row of the grid by Taylor Booker, who returns for Team Bear Pope. Good to see him back in the number 77. Shajee Zuhair starts 5th today, the privateer just ahead of Ryan Otis, and then we will see James Logsdon, the championship leader of the pros, where he starts in 7th place, completing the run of the pro starting order. And then behind, we've got our 2 plucky Pro-Ams. We have Tom Bryce, the man who's looking to give chase to Glenn Bratton, but will he be able to usurp him, or will they be tied, or will we see Glenn Bratton pull off a bit of magic of his own? Well, ladies and gentlemen, the good news is we haven't got long to find out, because the pace car starts to make its way away. The field follows the pace car, and as they all head on around for this formation app, we are only approximately around about a minute away for going green flag racing action, because they head on around. All night time has settled in here, but one thing we can definitely tell you is that they are going to be on the wet tyres currently, or at least most likely, although our pace car does seem to have done a bit of a disappearing act there, unless I'm very much mistaken, as they make the way on around, because we do seem to have a pace car that is not visible, and indeed our drivers are required to hold their pace. Well, that's the first time I've ever seen that. I'll be 100% honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, but sometimes they say you've seen everything and then you don't see everything at all. But there is a pace car that they're following. You can see the wheel tracks of the pace car. You just sadly cannot see the pace car itself. And, well, iRacing, whilst it's an absolutely fantastic simulator, there's always little bugs, and that's definitely going to go over my mind there as one of the more comical ones that I've seen in recent history. But as they all head on around, everyone absolutely set, and, well, the rain has stopped falling, at least for now, but wet tyres will be on the cars. We can't unfortunately get the tyre data for you, so we're going to have to do our best guess, but these GT machines have a wet compound, and they also do have a dry compound, but I suspect we'll be seeing a wet tyres for the majority, if not all of the racing today. But should there be a wet to slick transition, well, that could prove to be a very pivotal touching point of the race, and it could really prove to be decisive in terms of how it all concludes. But here they all come in towards the last couple of corners, and as they do, towards the bus stop chicane, it's over to Matthew Morehart to take us away for 60 minutes of racing action here at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, and to see our championship through to its conclusion. And it's lights and away we go. For our season finale as Matthew Morehart goes green. And as they roar the way down towards the opening braking zone, well, all the drivers right now absolutely eager to get a good start here, but sometimes a little bit of caution could prove valuable. But coming out of the source then, well, Morehart's had a brilliant start in his Porsche, no doubt about it. Meanwhile, Julian Jones already ahead of Ryan Otis and Jermaine Warren, particularly getting ahead of Warren then, the Ford EcoBoost machine. As we see further behind, Shajee Zuhair and Taylor Bookout, both being cleared by James Logsdon, as the spray starts to become very significant coming into Rouge and Radion. And, well, the first time through here, they'll have to be very careful as they tiptoe their way through, but right now all the drives safely on through the opening four corners, which is great to see. And, well, the rain coming back here, particularly onto the Kemmel Straights. The rain falling at certain parts, but not all of them. But meanwhile, Logsdon versus Warren here as they cover down. You can see the spray, you can see the headlights. It's not 100% visible. What you can see is the fact we've almost got three wide there. That's going to be Logsdon, Warren and Zuhair, but James Logsdon goes through the middle, parts the seas like Moses, and Jermaine Warren slips back to 5th place. The man who started second pulls down the order to a further degree, but still right now keeping his head down and 9. There's plenty more laps to go, and therefore he's not too far away from victory. And you never know what can happen over the course of 60 minutes at Spa-Francorchamps in the dry, let alone in these conditions, the wet. But he goes straight on, does Warren, and goes the gravel trap there at Rivage corner, and he's going to go around. But does he keep it going? He does. He just about keeps the wheels turning, does not let it get buried in the gravel, and that's good there for Jermaine Warren. So falls to the back of the field, but it could have been far, far worse, and he'll be happy with that to know he's still going. But Matthew Morehart, a great start from him, and right now just trying to stay out of trouble as they come down through Pouhon. And the thing as well, right now for Matthew Morehart, this is not a nice place to be. Of course, in practice, it was a wet circuit then. The rain had really come down in the build-up to practice today. As we do see Ryan Otis looking up the inside of Jones in second place. Well, Jones, they're going defensive as he makes his way through. The right is left through the Fanges chicane. But it's going to be Ryan Otis with a greater confidence in his Porsche 911 RSR. Oh, who's that going wide? That's James Logsdon. The championship leader goes to the barrier. He avoids it just about, or he briefly touches it, but he doesn't go straight into it, so he's able to carry on. That's not the way he's wanted to go whatsoever, and will suddenly drops all the way to the back of the field as well as Taylor Bookout. We side by side with him as he goes around the outside. So Bookout makes his way through, but looking back up towards the very front. Well, Matthew Morehart and Ryan Otis getting closer and closer already. Otis is absolutely storming, but to be fair, we have seen in more recent rounds, even when Otis has taken pole position, his typical game plans be to play it very safe on the opening couple of laps and then turn up the pace once he's 100% confident he's got the heat and the confidence in the car, as well as the heat in the tyres. But as they make the way through the bus stop chicane, we can see Matthew Morehart a little bit eager on the brakes there, going quite late, but definitely right now I think worried about the man who's coming up behind him. Remember, these two both joined the series all the way back at what was Road America, and will both made very good first impressions, and definitely we're very grateful to have them here in the middle of the pack Racing League GTE League. But after one lap, it is Matthew Morehart who leads the way ahead of Ryan Otis, with Julian Jones in third. But hold the phone on that, we've got a bit of a change of position as Taylor Bookout giving up a spot there to his Team Bear teammate of James Logsdon, so that's a swap for 8th place. And remember, drivers score points based on overall finishing position. For the most part, unless you're a pro-am driver, then you will score bonus points for where you sit on your class podium. It will be 3 for first, 2 for second, and 1 for third. So right now, Tom Bryce looking on course for all 3 of those bonus points, whereas Glenn Bratton only on course for 2 of them by comparison. But that does encourage drivers to battle for every position, regardless of class. Indeed, you have to make a tactical decision as to whether you fight for every position or whether you do let some go. But there is no prerogative whereby, if you find yourself as a pro-am driver with a pro behind you, you're naturally encouraged to give way. You've got to think on the spot what's better? Hold on to overall position and perhaps sacrifice some race time, or 30 do the opposite, let the place go, sacrifice some overall points earned, but make sure you stay in your position in the Pro-Am class. Well, that'll be a bit of a gamble there for our Pro-Ams, but meanwhile for our Pros out there, they get no such bonus points, and therefore they've got the tough work to do, which is to earn every place on the road the hard way. But as our top three make the one down, you can see they're definitely breaking away, and right now Jones staying with Otis. Shahee's a hair a bit further behind there, and a bit of a lonely fourth at the moment. I think he was expected to be chasing James Logsdon until Logsdon made his error. And meanwhile, Tom Bryce, 7 seconds behind. There's your leading Pro-Am driver. He's the leader of the 5 cars headlights. He comes into your view with Glenn Bratton behind, building up a bit of a queue. Jermaine Warren, James Logsdon and Taylor Bookout behind. Albeit right now as he comes down the hill, goes very wide for him, put on bed, he goes to rejoin. He's got to be very careful as he tries to rejoin on that exit curve. That is not going to make life easy at all. And we're coming in towards the next braking zone here. So it tells me Glenn Bratton is going to the back off and just simply tuck it behind. But Jermaine Warren making his way on around through the corners right now, and the BMW M8 driver having to really work hard to keep Logsdon behind, and Taylor Bookout trying to follow suit. But meanwhile, back to the front, we have Matthew Morhart and Ryan Otis together. Here comes Ryan Otis then. He is a bit inevitable in these situations, and well, we ride on board with the number 3 driver, looking to find a way in. But the problem is that spray, remember, we're offset to the right inside the car, and we've got a camera that's a little bit higher on what is the rear roll cage, whereas meanwhile, for Ryan Otis in his position, he's sat on the left-hand side of the car, and he sits a little bit lower by comparison, so that spray is blinding as they build up the speed. And what it means is for Matthew Morhart, the whole aim of the game here is just hold your line. When you're the leader in such wet conditions and there's so much spray coming off the track surface, it's actually better not to panic and only go defensive when the other car is getting within 2/10, because at that point the spray actually starts to not necessarily dissipate, but you can see through the spray to a degree and actually start to see the rear headlights a little more clearly. You can start to get your bearings on the road. But whilst Ryan Otis is the best part of half a second behind, Matthew Morhart needs to take the confidence here. All he needs to do is really hold his line and let Ryan Otis have to do the hard work of figuring out where he is on the road. As Julian Jones continues to follow, well, your Ford EcoBoost machine definitely working hard. As we can see the privateer there in the family car, the fact dedicated to Fast and Furious. Well, he breaks his way down, and this car does have very limited visibility out of its cockpit already. I can only imagine what that visibility is like for the driver now. But meanwhile, further back, Jermaine Warren and Taylor Bookout still together. They both passed Glenn Bratton, so they found their way on through. And James Logsdon, in fact, has found his way past Warren. But here they come down, Warren versus Bookout. And I think we're going to see our BMW driver on the right of your picture. And that's Taylor Bookout on the left of your picture there, up the inside, in towards the chicane. And we'll smooth move there, gets it done for Lecom. Now into Malmedy he goes, and that is going to be now 7th place earned for Taylor Bookout. And coming down the hill, well, Tom Bryce now finds himself with James Logsdon on his inside. Bryce here in the lazy boy machine decides not to fight it too hard. I think his priority is first and foremost to make sure he finishes ahead of Glenn Bratton, because right now, if things were to finish as they currently stand, it would be, I do believe, an opportunity for Tom Bryce to take the championship. But meanwhile, back to the front of the field, because Ryan Otis goes on the attack versus Morhart in towards the chicane. That being the Fandra chicane, it goes from inside to outside, and he gets it under Ryan Otis. A lovely move. And that's going to move him up to now into lead. And is this where the number 3 driver now starts to put his marker on this and starts to run away? We'll have to wait and see whether he can do so and chase down that 4th win and make it a 50% win rate this season. Although, unfortunately for him, it won't be the perfect Euro Cup, because of the fact he did have that 2nd place finish at the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya. But of course, understandably, if he can take a 50% win rate, that is a huge achievement in itself. Julian Jones now chasing after Morhart, and it does seem as though Morhart, after a great start, is now just starting to slip a little bit on pace. It's a small slip, to be fair, but we'll have to wait and see what lap times Ryan Otis does and how quickly he pulls away as Morhart comes barreling into the braking zone of the bus stop chicane. He has to lock up the front left brake, and in the end, well, he missed his braking zone there, and you can see Ryan Otis saw it coming and decided to be quite patient before turning in, just in case Morhart needed the inside line in order to take evasive action. So all the drivers very aware that unfortunate for Matthew Morhart, but it will cost him 2nd place. And now Julian Jones is the fastest lap of the race, a 2 minute 35. As hold up the phone, what's happened to Ryan Otis, who's lost out Julian Jones? Well, we're going to get a look at that shortly, as we also just did see what was Taylor Bookout passing at Tom Bryce for 6th place. It's all chop and change as they head up the hill. And Julian Jones right now will lead in the way, but I think Ryan Otis, well, if he's fallen back, I suspect it's a mistake at the source. I wonder if he's just got a bit deep under braking. Al Tursi had a bit of snap oversteer, trying to get the power down in the Porsche. Of course, the Porsche does have some of the best rear traction in low-speed corners, but unlike its typical counterparts at the time and its modern counterparts in GT3 racing, it is not rear-engine, rear-wheel drive, which is perfect for these wet weather conditions because all the weight goes on the rear tyres, which is what you want in order to be able to get the best traction. In fact, it's mid-engine rear-wheel drive. Porsche breaking away from their traditional drivetrain for this Porsche 911 RSR 2017 machine for the simple reason it was the best way to go. And indeed, there's plenty of interviews out there at the time. There were plenty of news articles saying, what have Porsche done? It's complete sacrilege for Porsche to have this configuration, only for them to confirm we wanted to keep it rear engine, rear wheel drive. But in the end, when we did all the testing, when we did all the modelling, it actually was better to move the engine forward in towards what's just behind the driver's cabin. But as they head on through, well, meanwhile, from the theory of the design of a car to the theory out of the circuit, well, Tom Bryce right now, in theory, will be under pressure soon, but Ryan Otis and Jones coming out to put on bend, and as we come back to the leaders, that's going to be Otis on the inside, and it looks like Julian Jones is having the happiest run through put on bend and does take that lead back. But will it be with for long, or will he find Julian Jones so he catches up to him again? Does he make a mistake of his own? Well, I think normally if Ryan Otis makes a mistake, he will very quickly rectify it as they come through Stablo 1 and into a Stablo 2. Through the double right they go, and as they do, Ryan Otis battling with the steering of the car. And, well, absolutely driving the limit right now. He wants to make the break, but I think the problem is as well, given the fact we're not having any rainfall at the moment, this circuit is technically getting drier. Now, it won't look like it's getting drier, and indeed, I think you'll be sat there right now thinking, well, what exactly is the commentator on about? But just believe me when I say that this circuit is now gradually starting to dry up a little bit. The initial surface water is gradually being removed. It won't go at a quick pace, but what it means is this circuit does technically start to get faster as time goes on. If we see some rain come back, it will top up the rain surface, but most likely in the next 10 to 15 minutes you'll start to see those spray contrails just get reduced a little bit. It won't get to the point necessarily where it'll be a dry tyre, but you will see they start to just lower slightly, and that tells you there's more pace in the circuit. And as that pace of the circuit rises, in fact, we can already see it, because on that lap, Ryan Otis a 2 minute 34.15, Jones a 2:34.32. The lap before it was 2 minute 35.1s, so we've already gained a second, and you could take off half a second for the battling that we've seen. But either way, the circuit is getting a bit quicker. Drivers start to get a little bit more confident, but it's the age-old problem then, which is as you get more confident and you feel the circuit is getting quicker, you become very quickly at risk of becoming overconfident, where you're pushing harder than the track is evolving, and that's what you've got to be careful of at this point in time. You need to naturally get faster, and you need to take it little by little. You have to grow with the circuit, not with what your pace says you should do. But as they make the way through, we're right on board here in terms of the number 69 machine. All looking nice for Julian Jones at the moment, as Glenn Bratton has come into the pit lane. As I look up our commentator booth window, we believe there's a bit of a story there. We are expecting at least one pit stop today, and that of course will be for fuel. Changing tyres will be entirely optional, although to be fair there might be a full tyre change, and if so, that will be for the simple purpose of what will be going from the wets to the slicks. I don't think anyone will be changing individual tyres. Just a reminder, of course, of the fact that in the World Endurance Championship regulations, on which these cars race to until 2023 inclusive, they did race under regulations whereby it was fuel first, tyre changes afterwards. The car could not be operated on simultaneously to do both, all part of the rules, and therefore it does mean changing tyres where it's going to add the best part of 28 seconds onto the fuel stop. So it means a stationary time of approximately could be up to 50 seconds, depending on how much fuel is going to go into the car, and that is not time you want to be spent in the pit lane if you can help it. But meanwhile, as Jones staying with Otis, Taylor Book out, find himself on the back of Bryce again. He got close earlier on, but Bryce was able to open up that gap a little bit, and now the battle for sixth starts to build. As Glenn Bratton has left the pit lane, makes his way down the Kemmel Straight, a very lonely set of headlights there for his BMW M8, but I suspect right now just keep his head down. As meanwhile, we come back to Bryce and Book out. Bryce going a bit defensive here, coming on through the Fadger chicane, and the 272 driver here. Find a lot of gravel has been distributed on the road there, and I suspect that's gravel from perhaps where James Logsdon went off earlier on. But right now, that set of headlights definitely looking menacing as they come around. And, well, I think for Bryce at this point just wanted to try and stay away from Bookout. You can see the difficulties that Taylor Bookout is having. It's the fact he's got the pace, but the problem is as soon as he gets this close with that spray, he loses all visibility of the road. At that point, you're driving blind, effectively, whereby you know the circuit. You can do it from muscle memory, but you've also always got that slight hesitance. What if the driver in front makes a mistake? What if I don't get a chance to react in time? Remember, your reaction times as a driver, whether it's in the simulator or in real life, they can be as quick as humanly possible. Indeed, they can be down to the thousandths of a second, but nothing is ever going to prepare you for the fact you suddenly go from looking at a load of spray to suddenly a set of rear brake lights appearing or something else entirely. But as this race comes towards the end of its first quarter, we've definitely had an exciting opening 15 minutes or so, ladies and gentlemen, and let's take a look back at some of the big moments from the start of the race. Well, it all began, of course, with our drivers going green as we take a look to our replay footage. And as they did go green flag racing, well, Matthew Morhart got the field underway. And it was a very slow start there, a very careful start behind the safety car, the phantom safety car, we should say. And then they made the way away. Matthew Morhart definitely having a solid start as he went his way down in towards turn number 1. Jermaine Ward, Julian Jones find themselves there, with Jones, the end, going all in versus the MOP Racing BMW. And taking a very tight exit line there. That was a very brave line from Julian Jones. I would have thought he'd hit a puddle of water on that inside curb, but found a safe way to do so and got through very nicely. Shajee Zuhair, meanwhile, found himself battling early on with Taylor Bookout. James Logsdon had already cleared both of them by the run into turn at number 1. And then we did have a bit of difficulty for a few drives, including Jermaine Warren taking a bit of a liberal use of track limits there. That would have been a slowdown penalty, as the rain briefly did trickle down on the Kevin Straight, and was serving that slowdown for cutting the course. That only cost him more and more time. But then it went a little bit wrong for Taylor Bookout on that one, and this was coming through Pullman Bend as he made his way down through turn number 11, got the power down. Oh, goodness me, a big cut loose there at the rear of the car, and I think that's cold rear tyres as he tried to get the power down at the rear right in particular, and it simply said no, otherwise around we go. And then a little bit later on, of course, we had this for James Logsdon. Well, we see the tail end of it. Can we see what actually happened? And the answer is yes, we can. This was on board with Logsdon, the Team Bear Poke driver making his way through. Oh, goodness me, the car snapped him right to the Taylor Bookout. In fact, the Team Bear Poke team both had that happen, and Logsdon did briefly biff the barrier, but not too big of a hit there, and I suspect he will get away with that or thereabouts. But then we had to wait a little bit longer before we started to see some other changes, and it was on lap number 3, we saw this between Ryan Otis and Matthew Morhart, and it was their battle, of course, coming down through Pullman in towards the Fadger chicane, and Otis went up the inside for the move, went onto the brakes, and Matthew Morhart tried to defend it from outside to inside, but in the end, Ryan Otis, we just had that confidence, that grip level started to shine through. At least he thought he'd got it done, and then only months later we had this big month for Matthew Morhart as he came charging down in towards the bus stop chicane with all the confidence of when to come back, when then he missed his braking point, missed it by about 25 metres, and did very well not to clip the rear of Ryan Otis, who saw him coming and tried to wait as late as possible before turning in. But then, as our drivers made their way out of the bus stop chicane, well, we saw them go on to lap number 4, and Julian Jones took the lead of the race. But how did he do so? Well, into the braking zone they went, and I think for Ryan Otis there's going to be a bit of a mistake here, and in the end he just went a little bit deep on the brakes, and Julian Jones was close already, and I wonder if Otis actually did let that go rather than think about defending it or worrying about the battle. But either way, it definitely was a bit of an exciting moment, but we also did see was Ryan Otis come back past Jones. It was late on the lap, and this was coming down through Pullman as Jones had a little bit of a wobble there coming through the double left-hander, and therefore lost a bit of traction, lost a bit of top-end speed, and Ryan Otis in the end swept back through in towards the Fanders chicane. But lap number 4 was not a good lap for Glenn Bratton, as he did have a bit of a off-track moan, and this was from Pullman in towards the Fanders chicane as he came on through. Was this what forced him into the pits? It was. He went straight on, and it went sliding on that very slippery gravel into the tyre barrier, and that's why Glenn Bratton had to come into the pits for repair work. It's fast repair being used, but with that, ladies and gentlemen, we make our way back to your live racing. And as we do come on back, well, some big moments from the start of the race, no doubt about it. Still plenty of big moments to come here as our drivers continue to tour their way around the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. And Ryan Otis right now will definitely start to try and get the hammer down, but Jones is staying with him. So Julian Jones is not being dropped here. And I definitely think that Julian is looking very confident in these wet weather conditions. And if he can keep this up, well, again, we've always got the question mark, is Otis just pacing himself to Jones at the moment, which is always a possibility. And that's not because he likes toying with his food or anything like that. It's simply because if you're leading and you can control the pace and the narrative of the race, why push any further? Because understandably, what you will then do is you will save extra fuel. But hold the phone on that, because, oh goodness me, that's coming all the way out of Blanchimont, and that is Shajee Zuhair hold off Matthew Morhart. And in fact, as Morhart gets a bit closer there, I think he has been passed by Zuhair as a result of that. So the Sri Lanka driver moves up into third, and right now continues to rip and tear his way through the field. And well, his next target will be Julian Jones, who is 18 seconds up the road. But Zuhair definitely making a lot of progress, and Matthew Morhart would like that place back if possible, but that's going to be easier said than done. But as they roar the way out of the source, James Logsdon still on a bit of a recovery drive at the moment, albeit a personal best at 2 minute 33.65. He may not be on the pace of the leaders, who are lapping in the 31s at the moment, so he's 2 seconds off the lead pace. And Julian Jones for 31.24 that previous. That a monster lap. But understanding right now, Logsdon building up in confidence. Shajee Zuhair finds that Matthew Morhart's growing confidence behind him as they head down the Kemmel Straight, going defensive there, but right now Morhart's going to go even tighter to the inside line with the side draft there as they head in towards the braking zone. Here they go. What's it going to be between the two of them? And in the end, it is going to be Morhart the inside. Zuhair still fights him though as they come on through Les Combes, but Morhart outside to inside completes the move. A lovely move there for Matthew Morhart, and as we ride aboard with Shajee Zuhair, we your number 10 driver right now in the Marmite livery machine. Some love it, some hate it, just like the BMW M8. Was ahead, does slip back to fourth place, but a great battle between them. And Matthew Morhart in the end getting the job done. Will we now, can he break away? Can he seal the deal? Or will he find that Zuhair stays with him all the way to the very end of this one? And again, that's the thing about Shajee. Once you pass him, you've got to get a bit of a break on him. You can't just simply let him sit there, because otherwise he normally starts to get a bit quicker, but not like that, as the car twitches away from him as he comes out to put on bed. We just go off board. Well, in the end, the car completely lets go, but thankfully he gets it back under control. And I suspect it's the flowing line of water that's coming down off of turn 10, whereby essentially the water actually comes down from the inside of the circuit across the road to the outside to where the drains, and it's that standing water, or that flowing standing water, which sounds a bit contradictory, but I'm sure you get what I mean. In fact, standing water typically being a term used to describe where the water stands over the top of the circuit and it's not necessarily completely dispersing away, and obviously it's flying. It is a stream of water that stands over the top of the circuit. That's how we're referring to it. Well, I think he's just hit that patch. There's quite a few areas where that does occur at Spa-Francorchamps. Another notable one, indeed, is on the run out of Radion and onto the Kemmel Straight. As you go through that curved kink, there's actually a flow of water that comes from the outside of the circuit to the inside through that kink. And well, if you hit that with a little bit of steering lock, you definitely feel it in these machines, where the rear of the car will suddenly feel very unsettled for a brief moment. You can catch it easily, but if you're not prepared for it for the first couple of times, suddenly the car can completely come out of your grasp when you least expect it. But going back to what we talked about earlier on, it's a new fastest lap of the race, a 2 minute 31.39 for Otis. As he comes on through, ready on. Well, in fact, we're going to have to hold that, ladies and gentlemen, because who's that? That is Tom Bryce, and Bryce has got wrong at curve Paul Ferrier. Well, not quite sure what's happened there to your prime leader, but he's definitely got it wrong. But he's got a nice comfortable gap to Glenn Bratton, and well, the struggles continue for our pro-ams. We'll get a replay of that shortly as we do come back to Otis and Jones. And Ryan Otis feeling a bit more pressure here from Julian Jones. But what we were trying to say earlier on is the fact that if Ryan Otis is pacing himself, well, he'll be able to save fuel and some tyre life. These wet weather tyres, whilst they are in ideal conditions at the moment with a wet track surface, as the track surface starts to dry, and actually over the course of time with the tyres being used up, we will see those wet weather tyres lose life. And when they do, they are tread block tyres, essentially, much like your typical road tyre, where the tread blocks enable the dispersal of water, and that enables the wet tyre to be able to drive on these wet conditions. A slick dry tyre, meanwhile, has no tread blocks. It cannot disperse water. So once you start to get standing water, it will aquaplane, where the car sits over the top of the water and just slides on it. It no longer makes contact with the tarmac. But the idea being, those tread blocks will be worn down, and in the worst case scenario, particularly when the tyre starts to overheat, should it be driven on a dry track surface, which could potentially be a factor here today, should we see the circuit dry up enough, although at night I suspect we won't see the circuit dry anywhere as quick as it would during daytime, given the fact we don't have ambient light and therefore we don't have sunshine, nor do we have track temperature. Well, what we would see And the say it was to drive is the fact you essentially turn the wet tyre into a poor man's slick tyre that's already well past its use life. But Ryan Otis right now coming back to the fault. If he is managing the pace, he'll want to try and get that gap up to about 2 seconds before he then dulls down his pace to try and constantly match Jones. You don't really want to be playing the game of pace matching at around about a second, because it is giving the driver behind, as much as you can save some fuel and tyre life, the driver behind, if they feel confident enough to match you, or that essentially you're not getting away, they can also start to fuel save and also time manage. So Julian Jones right now doing an absolutely fantastic job here, staying as close as he is, as he just stumbles to get on the gearbox a little bit there, coming out to the final corner. But to be fair, I think that was more hesitant to making sure he doesn't overcook the rear tyres or overspin them. Going in towards the source right now, Julian Jones really doing well. And well, this for GT, this is looking to be one of his best performances of the season, his best performance of the season, and keep this up. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's potentially going to go for that win. But we'll have to wait and find out. We've still got over half the race to go. Good, it's been on the dashboard right now, so this is a little bit more exaggerated in terms of how much that spray affects visibility, but still, as that wiper does its utmost, that wiper not really doing too much, to be fair to it, other than, well, it's not just there for show, but right now it's Julian Jones going to put on a show. He's picking up the overspeed, looking to the outside here, and does he go for it? No, he waits instead, just sits behind a little bit more. You can see that Otis really had to take his time to get off the brake, try to trail off as gradually as possible. And these two pro drivers, very different driving styles as well. Jones a lot more confident. He's a bit more aggressive on the brakes initially, and then using the throttle pedal to drive the car. But here they come into the braking zone for Ravage, and we'll backs off there nice and early. This is all about trying to get into Otis's mind and trying to get him to make an error as Jermaine Warren comes into the pit lane. I'm keeping an eye out my content booth window as to what's happening with his car as he heads on through, the MOP racing driver. But Jones just having a little bit of a slide going into exped, a bit of confidence, a bit misplaced, but now he brings it back onto the sense and sensibility, and we're downhill through Pullman Bend, going a bit wide of apex there, touching that exit curb and the white line, gets away with it, but they always have to be so careful about touching that painted white line and the exit curve. Those painted white lines, they are nowhere near as grippy as the tarmac itself. You may think, well, it's only paint, surely. It has a huge effect on grip, and those exit curves, or the inside curves as well, have as much of a challenge as Julian Jones is sliding over the road, going through and the Fangent chicane, and will almost lose it there, doing very well to keep that under control. And well, he's pushing hard, but Ryan Otis now is turning up the pace little by little, and you can see, look at the spray off the back of the cars, and you'll notice, particularly when you do sit off the back of Ryan Otis, because we've got the headlight of Julian Jones to illuminate it a bit more, that spray is slightly coming down. It's only marginal, it's not much. At high speed you can barely notice it, but at lower speeds you are seeing the spray contrail now actually get smaller, and that means this circuit is getting quicker. But of course we are seeing the confidence levels go up and the pace of the cars going up, not quite in line, and that's why Jones there just making that tiny error, but it could have been so fatal to his race. But Jermaine Warren in the pit lane, and as he makes his way on out, well, he's at risk here of going a lap down almost. Well, he's going to be passed by Glenn Bratton, but no, he's not going to be passed by Glenn Bratton. There's Bratton coming up behind him, but these two have pitted, and Jermaine Warren, well, he's been in. It has been a 1 minute and 1 second pit stop, so that's fuel, and most likely also tyres being changed. And well, something tells me that Jermaine Warren, he must have surely gone onto another set of wets. If he has gone onto a set of slicks, that is brave, and I don't think that is going to work out for him. But you never know, he might have found some magic that we don't know about. But right now I suspect he's gone on to another set of wet tyres. We are just going to double check in with race control as the nature of his pit stop and what exactly played out there, on whether it was potentially speed in the pit lane. And in fact, no, we do not have any penalties, so therefore for Jermaine Warren that was a tyre change as we understand it, as well as fuel. And well, now he's hoping he can get to the very end on what is a much more comfortable car. We'll see what it's to be. As meanwhile, come back to Ryan Otis and Julian Jones, and you see that gap. It went up to 1.3 seconds. It is now coming back. Jones is really not letting Otis go at this point. But James Logsdon, meanwhile, has slowly crawled his way up to Shajee Zuhair, now in 6 attempts. So therefore, may have an opportunity over the next couple of laps to try and make the move. Or does he think instead about pitting and going for the undercut strategy? Now, the undercut is a very interesting strategy when it comes to changeable conditions, because, understandably, if there is the risk or the thought that suddenly the circuit could be dry enough for a slick, not that I think it will be, but then you would never want to undercut. You'd want to go as long as humanly possible to give yourself the biggest strategic window in which to make the call on which tyre to go to if you need to change tyre. But if you think it's not going to change, then it'd be sensible to potentially consider the undercut. As meanwhile, Matthew Morhart, well, he makes way back on the road and cuts himself back on there and going wide at Ravage. But I think he's got it back on without too much issue, but he slips down to 5th place. So for Matthew Morhart, things are going from good to bad to backwards. Not the way he's wanted it to go whatsoever. as he gets himself back on the road. Well, we do take a look back, ladies and gentlemen, at some big moments only over the last few laps, including what happened to Matthew Morhart. But first and foremost, as we do have... Oh, hold up a second. That's Shajee Zuhair going around on the exit point. Benny's gone spinning around, and it's all gone wrong now. After gaining so much ground, moved up in the third, and suddenly James Logsdon takes it. Well, that and plenty more. We'll get a replay of, ladies and gentlemen. We go back for a trip in time. And this was Shajee Zuhair initially battling with Matthew Morhart. Morhart find his way through for third place at the time on the inside, back on lap number 8 down the Kemmel Straight. And well, we saw this earlier on, we see it again, and it was inside to outside then. Zuhair tried to fight it, but the Porsche having the better grip there for those medium speed corners. But then just a little bit later on the same lap, we had this for Tom Bryce. And this was Bryce making his way through Stavlo 2 or Curveball Ferrier, and he came on through, went a bit wide, touched the gravel, and with some tyres on the grass, some tyres on the tarmac, where in fact the exit curb went to the barrier there, got cooked around, and then to reverse his way back off the road in order to be able to get going once again. Unfortunate mistake for Tom Bryce, and well, thankfully able to carry on despite the big shunt to the barrier. But then we did see this for Jermaine Warren. And this was Warren coming out the pit lane, and we believe that car was on the jacks. We're not 100% certain of it, but as he made his way out the pit lane, well, a bit fortunate to come out just ahead of Glenn Bratton, and both of them serving their pit stops early on. And well, only moments after that, we had Matthew Morhart making his way down towards Rivage Bend. He was in third. You see Zuhair versus Logsdon in the back of your picture. So what happened to Matthew Morhart? And the answer is, came into Rivage and the rear let go. So I think they might have locked up the brakes there. And with the rear unlocking before the front, it typically does happen. And well, suddenly Morhart going around, and thankfully able to get it restarted, but not the way he wanted to go whatsoever. And then for Shajee Zuhair, make his way down for X. Well, this was the instant we saw for him as he came into Puon Bend. So make his way down into turns 10 and 11. Through the first left-hander he went. Where did he get it wrong? Carried the normal amount of speed. Rear started to let go there a little bit, but he got it under control. But then he just went a little bit wide there and got caught on the exit curb. But you can see the front right tyre. He had to try and pull the car off of the painted line, and that's where it went round. He pulled it off, but the rear right tyre was still stuck there, and he couldn't find the grip on the right-hand side, and the car came unstuck. And that's what happened to Shajee Zuhair. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's back to your live racing. We do coming back. Well, half the race now complete, and just like that, we're going into the second half, and Ryan Otis still controlling the gap to Julian Jones. It is expanding 2.1 seconds, the last sector line we saw. So right now for Otis, this is looking to be a gap that is slowly and steadily creeping into his favour. But to be fair, Julian Jones, I don't think he's letting Ryan Otis take this easy. I think the 69 driver is really coming alive as we see Ryan Otis into the pit lane. So he decides to go in dead on the halfway mark. Now, is this the right call? I think for Ryan Otis, that's been pressured into him a little bit. And by splitting this race in half, well, he gives himself what is a bit of a natural cool-down time for the tyres. But as he heads on down, I'm sure this is going to be a splash and dash pit stop, nothing more, nothing less. Meanwhile, also into the pits is Glenn Bratton again. So Bratton came in for repair work, of course, after his early incident, and now is in for what will be a strategic pit stop. Although we believe Jermaine Warren, who pitted on lap number 9, is essentially going to go to the end with that early pit stop, because these pit stops are occurring on lap number 12, or in Glenn Bratton's case, occurring on lap number 11, because he is a lap down in the race. But looking to James Logsdon, he comes in as well. Matthew Morhart follows him into the pit lane, and well, Logsdon's not had a good end to this lap. He's in fact lost a lot of time to Morhart, and Shajee Zuhair, well, he was 10.5 seconds behind, but he's now closing up as well. So we can suddenly see a fight for third place really erupt towards the very end as Glenn Bratton leaves the pit lane. Ryan Otis already headed out, 17.6 seconds here stop, and that will be for fuel and fuel alone. So therefore now he can go to the end, and he'll be hoping that essentially with clear track in front of him and no pressure of any cars behind him, the only distant pressure is strategic pressure versus Julian Jones, that he may now be able to essentially undercut Jones and take that win. But we'll have to see if that's the way it goes. And meanwhile, James Logsdon leaves the pit lane. Where's Matthew Morhart in relation to him? Morhart still being serviced. And in fact, Matthew Morhart spent an extra 5 seconds in the pits. Now, the only thing I can imagine is that perhaps Matthew Morhart either having to take the extra fuel, or alternatively deciding to change a tyre, which he may have squeezed in during that period. We'll have to wait and see what his game plan will be. But either way, the number 9 driver heads on out, but he will find that he's now 7 seconds behind James Logsdon, so he's got a bit of work to do to close that gap up. although I'm sure he'll find a way to do it quickly if he's got the pace. And Shajee Zuhair has gained 5 seconds in the pit stops versus Morhart. As a result, Morhart's much longer stop. We believe there might have been one tyre change to Morhart's car, and if so, it would most likely be the rear left tyre that's been changed. But Taylor Book out here comes out the pit lane, and as he does so, will be cleared by Tom Bryce. Bryce still going on, yet to pit, the Pro-Am leader. He and Julian Jones, the only drivers yet to pit for the strategic stop. So therefore, we look forward to seeing it when they do come in. Speaking of Julian Jones, here he is, as he comes out of Blanchimont. And, well, will he be coming in this time? Of course, going one lap longer than Ryan Otis, but he's got a 2-second gap he needs to somehow overhaul in the pits. Well, he won't be doing it like that as he loses the rear of the car, coming through the bus stop chicane, gets it together and comes into the pit lane, and that could be the mistake that cost him the chance to win in this race, at least getting ahead or getting close to the strategy. He's going to do it all on the road, but for Julian Jones, not the way he went to enter the pits whatsoever. On the feet there, just trying to attack it a little bit more, and then the circuit biting back instead. But Ryan Otis right now carried on as he heads in towards the bus stop chicane. Onto the brakes he goes in number 3, and well, for him, this is going to be the lead retaken because Jones has just got to his pit stall, and well, the team will not be able to get that car refilled any faster than the normal fuel gun rate. And for Ryan Otis right now, comes across the timeline, goes on to lap 14, and as he makes way past Jones, Jones will fall down to second place. There he is, and then here comes Ryan Otis. Jones has just left his pit box with a faster pit time to the tune of 1.5 seconds. So Julian Jones had done it right. If he had not had that speed, he would have been even with Otis coming out the pit lane based our predictions. But Ryan Otis right now is safe by 5 seconds, and it's all due to Jones' spin, which has cost him that critical time. So now his game plan will be to try and chase down Otis. He's going to have to work hard to do so. Indeed, they're on the wet tyres they've started the race on, so those will be up to temperature very quickly. They do lose a bit of tyre temperature in the pit lane, naturally, because they are static. And also the fact on the limiter, they're going nowhere near as quick as they would be on your typical racing circuit pace. So therefore, they do bleed a bit of tyre temperature. That's how you pump tyre temperature in the first place, is by going quick and also through heavy braking. So right now for Julian Jones, this has got to be an absolute monster second stint, as he clatters over the curves there of the chicane, and will lay on and definitely feed in the presence of the Ford GT EcoBoost driver. But right now for Jones, he's going to be batting upstream. But back to Taylor Lookout and Tom Bryce. Bryce right now still yet to come in as we understand it, albeit if so, I think we might have missed that pit stop as a result of the replay footage. We are just double checking in, and well, there was a pit stop on lap number 14 for Tom Bryce, and in fact he heads onwards. Well, in fact, as he comes on through, I do believe, well, Bryce is yet to pit, and no, in fact, it's going to be a pit stop. It will be on this lap. My apologies there. We did have a bit of lost control as we were reading the data early on. But right now, Tom Bryce carrying on even so. So, as a result, it's most likely he will be coming in soon, probably at the end of this lap, to be fair, for Tom Bryce, because we go on to lap 14 now for him. Indeed, just trying to keep track of the laps they make the one around, and Tom Bryce rolling his way through the corners. We're yet to pit, but he will have to pit soon, and Taylor Lookout gets closer and closer here as they make the way down the Kemmel Straight. They head onwards, and as he does so, well, both drivers here are looking to change the places over quite quickly. Lookout, of course, has already pit, so therefore there'd be no value in Bryce really fighting him unless he just wanted to have a bit of fun. But I don't think Taylor would appreciate that too much, in the fact that essentially he's trying to chase after Shajee Zuhair, who's 31.5 seconds away. But as they come through, well, meanwhile, look back to Glenn Bratton, the second of your Pro-Am drivers in the 289 BMW Privateer machine. And right now, a bit of a lonely race for him, but just keeping his head down and trying to get to the end. And in doing so, you never know what can happen. And he may be able to, as a result of by just finishing the race, he could become your overall Pro-Am champion for this season. But will most likely be your Euro Cup champion at this rate, given the fact that Tom Bryce was not able to make Silverstone. But as all these drivers make their way a bit deeper into the race distance, well, meanwhile, we've had a bit of a moment for Jermaine Warren. He's at a small off track, and I don't think it's a small off track for Jermaine Warren, in fact, because he makes his way back onto the road there, coming out of Radion. I think he's had a bit of a big one. I don't think it's a calamity, but definitely there. Normally, when it goes wrong for Erosion to Radion, it can be quite spectacular. We'll try and get a replay of that very shortly. From the driver who's definitely had a bit of a moment to a driver who right now is trying to make a moment. Well, Matthew Morhart comes across the timeline. James Logsdon at 2 minute 32.826. Matthew Morhart at 2:31.989. So Morhart right now building up the tempo. He is closing on the gap to James Logsdon by a second. And well, your number 9 driver right now doing everything he can, but understandably, he's got a lot more time to find out there. And well, with the laps that we have remaining, we're on lap number 15 from our leader of Ryan Otis, and I suspect at the rate of knots he's going at, we are going to be getting approximately another 10 laps if we did the quick mathematics. And the fact this circuit is getting quicker, again, we do not believe it's going to get to the point whereby the slick tyre is going to go on. I think we'd need warmer conditions to really do that, and if so, I think we would see the circuit go to a slick tyre about 15 minutes to go, but not here today. It is way too cool to do so, and well, to put you in the perspective, it is 62 degrees Fahrenheit track temperature. Ambient is actually higher at the moment, it's 67, and you're probably sat there thinking, well, surely that's not possible. The rain has really cooled this circuit down, and well, I think in the ambient temperature it's coming up to what is 11:15 local time, and indeed night time fully in swing here. Moore Drive's done a fantastic job of keeping it on the road and dealing with treacherous conditions, which would definitely catch out some of the very best, there's no doubt about it. But as we do leave Matthew Morehart into the pit lane, has come Tom Bryce, and as quick as he's come in, well, it's blinking you miss it because we just catch it in the end, and well, we thought he'd come in a bit earlier on, but no, indeed, he has come in on his lap 14, and Tom Bryce makes his way back up to speed now. Comes to be clear, Glenn Bratton, who's, oh, good at speed for Bratton, it's gone very much wrong there, and that is at the, I believe, the Fantasy chicane. And it went wrong for James Logsdon earlier on there, but he went a bit deeper off the second apex. That seems to have gone wrong in the first corner at turn 12. He goes to rejoin, and coming on past him, that will be your fourth place runner, Matthew Morehart, who puts a lap onto Glenn Bratton. And we'll get a replay of that shortly. But we can now confirm that Bryce's pit stop, making it happen on lap 14. Well, it does mean now he's all said and done. Everyone's said and done with regards to their strategic pit stop for fuel. And that's all about getting it to the end and seeing if there's anybody who needs to splash and dash, or if anyone is daring to go to the slick tyre. Although I think it would be misplaced confidence if they were to do so. But as he makes his way on a round, well, we do look back to your leader, Ryan Otis. And charges onwards towards what will be the second sector of lap number 16. We do take a look back at some of the big moments from the last few minutes, ladies and gentlemen, including what just happened to Glenn Bratton. And here we go. But firstly, of course, we take a look back at what happened to Jermaine Warren. And this is Warren coming through Erosion Radion. Made a bit of an error through here. What exactly happened? Well, it's all clear initially, but took a lot of exit curb. Oh, goodness me! And the car getting caught up on the exit curb of Radion and hit the barrier. And then, for good measure, rolling backwards into the other barrier. But it's two very light touches there for Jermaine Warren. He's got away very luckily with that. That could have been far, far worse. That could have been a tow to the pit lane there, but not quite so. And Warren, I think he'll be thanking his lucky stars that did not end up in disaster, because that could have seen the car in absolute pieces. But with him surviving that instant, meanwhile, we also did have what was this for Glenn Bratton, and this was Bratton only moments ago, coming in towards the Fantasy chicane. Into turn 12, he went tight line on entry, went deep, carried too much speed, and in the end, rolled off onto the grass, trying to get the car back onto the road, but at that point, he was more passenger than driver, and, well, just grazing the barrier there, having to turn it for a very tight steering lock, and, well, the 289 driver gradually rejoining, but still a lap down. With that, it's back to your live racing. As we do come back, ladies and gentlemen, well, not too long to go in this race now. A third of the race remains, and all our drivers doing an absolutely brilliant job, but Ryan Otis continuing to open up that gap to Julian Jones. Gap now up to almost 8 seconds. Such is the pace he's now deploying, and I think Julian Jones is trying to respond, but I think now as this circuit is starting to get that little bit grippier and a little bit warmer, and that the dry line, if you will, although you can't really see a dry line, to be fair. Even if we were on daylight conditions, it'd be hard to see, but there is a degree of a dry line for it. In fact, you can see it there in the headlights of Julian Jones. Can we get on board to show you what that dry line looks like? It's not too prominent from the onboard here of Julian Jones' car, but we can see there's a darker patch of tarmac at certain points, and that's to where rubber has been laid down in the past, but it's been washed away, and really that's just marks in the road. But what you'll notice is, in those headlights, towards the edges, there will be slightly darker patches of tarmac compared to what will be right dead centre, and it's that dead centre line that he's trying to target. That is the dry line, but it's so difficult to spot out there. But if drivers can find it, they'll start to find that a little bit more lap time. And particularly here, you look to the right and you'll see there is a definitive greyer line on the right side of the right headlight, and that is where you do have the wetter surface, and then you get the puddles, of course, around the apex curves. But that is the dry line that is starting to form. It's still a wet surface. It's not a dry bit of track, so it's not as though they're cooking the tyres, but it is drier enough enough to know you want to be on that line where possible to get the best possible lap time. And coming down the hill, you notice there, taking a much more wider line than normal, and that is because a lot of the water is actually flowing to the inside of the corner rather than the outside of Rivage. But as Julian Jones heads on around, I'm really attacking right now. My good lord, that was quick coming through X. That was full confidence for Jones. In fact, he's just taken a whole second out of Ryan Otis in the first sector, and well, I think Ryan Otis right now is going to need to respond. If Jones keeps this up, there is no reason why he cannot close that gap down with the time remaining. He is hustling, to say the least. As meanwhile, Taylor Bookout makes his way down the start-finish straight, and well, your last few drivers right now, who is of your pros, running on the lead lap. And, well, a bit of a liney race for Taylor Bookout with 35 seconds to Shajee Zuhair, who he's not closing up to. It's 1.5 seconds he's losing to Zuhair over laps. And meanwhile, Tom Bryce, Jermaine Warren and Glenn Bratton all gradually heading towards a lap down. As meanwhile, oh goodness, but that's gone wrong for Jermaine Warren. That's the spin coming out of the Fangis chicane. And, well, the number 14 driver in his BMW at this point comes into Stavlo 1. And the race is going from good to bad to difficult for him. But still, carrying on, he's just got to see that checkered flag. And if he can do so, well, it will be a huge achievement here. To race in the dark is one thing. We've seen it several times this season, including at Watkins Glen and Sebring. Also, to a lesser extent, at the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalonia. To race in the dark and in the wet is probably the hardest thing you can do on a simulator in real life, because race in the dark, of course, all your brake markers, all your reference points, they all disappear. Yes, you have headlights, as we do see Julian Jones' headlights shining a little bit brighter, given the fact he's just set the fastest lap of the race at 2:29.954. That was a grand total of 8 tenths quicker than Ryan Otis' 30.7 on that previous best for him. But the point is that with those headlights, they do shine the way, but of course, water on a dark track surface in the night, you really are driving into the unknown every millimetre you move. Unlike in the dry, whereby essentially, as he makes his way, for example, down the Kemmel Straight, he knows he's on the Kemmel Straight, and in the dry, you would know that you're looking for essentially that curve on your left-hand side to appear to suddenly know where you are braking. However, in the wet, you've then got to worry about where is the water in relation to that braking zone. Where are the puddles? And those puddles, they don't always appear. Yes, the headlights will be reflected off of those puddles, but sometimes you essentially go onto the puddle before you truly do see the reflection. The reaction times have got to be absolutely spot on, and also it's the small flows of water, those are the hardest things to spot, because of the fact that they're always changing. And the circuit is always evolving, and that's why racing these conditions are so difficult, and that's why we've got those conditions for this season finale. The most difficult race it could be, and I'll go out there saying this is probably the most difficult race in middle of the pack racing league's history since its inception of series on iRacing, and Wild Drive's really taken to the challenge with aplomb. The personal best shining for all the drivers now, and I think everyone is starting to just get a bit more confident. And, well, James Logsdon, meanwhile, in third. Well, he's not quite catching the leaders. He was 4 seconds slow on that previous lap, but he's been caught at a rate of almost the second lap by Matthew Morehart, who is 10 seconds behind at the moment. And therefore, I think Logsdon will be safe given the number of laps remaining based on time. I think we've got this lap plus at least another 6 more. So, for Logsdon, he could afford to lose a second a lap, and Matthew Morehart will still not catch him. Here is Matthew Morehart coming down towards Virage, and he's trying to make amends for what was, of course, a bit of a difficult moment earlier on in the race. If he can make up for it, he'll be very grateful. If not, it would be a little bit of a drab end to his season. I have to wait and see what it is to be for him. Shajee Zuhair a bit further back, 10.8 seconds adrift, and we're in 5th place at the moment. And the BMW M8 drives really committed to this car this season, and to be fair, he's had some brilliant moments, including the battling between himself and James Logsdon. It was so back and forth at Silverstone, and Logsdon in the end able to take that win by such a slender margin. But Zuhair, well, he never gave up, and that's been the interesting thing about this GTE League, the fact we have seen the Porsche really prove to be the popular car. But to be fair, it's not just because of the fact it's one of the stronger cars based on the current balance of performance, but also it is genuinely one of the most popular GTEs of its time. Everyone remembers the Porsche 911 RSR GTE for its absolute screamer of an engine ever since it was debuted at Le Mans all those many years ago, in the fact that just absolutely able to deafen anyone who's nearby it, going over 9,000 RPM. And naturally aspirated, of course. was that wonderful 6-cylinder engine. But understandably, there are other cars out there, and we have seen the occasional Corvette, although it hasn't proven to be that popular a car. The Corvette really falling from grace going into this season with the balance performance update. We have seen the BMW become stronger, better on the brakes compared to how it used to be, also maintain its straight line supremacy. And the Ford GT, as Julian Jones has brought to every round he's attended, well, he's definitely enjoyed this car, no doubt about it, and really showing us what it can do. And the fact this is really one of those cars whereby if you can get the most out of its unique downforce profile, its aerodynamics really something special. You can really get a lot of time out of it, and it can be an impressive car, but it's one that has to be driven on the limit. It's not an easy car. Of course, we have been missing as well our Ferraris. We haven't had too many Ferraris on the grid this season. The Ferrari 488 GTE Evo, indeed, perhaps the hardest car to drive in GTE on iRacing, a very operating window limited car compared to all the others. A lot of them have a much wider operating window, but out of the 5, the Ferrari, even with the balance performance update, still having a much narrower operating window. The tyre temperature range was expanded quite considerably compared to what it used to be, where it used to be literally within a 5-degree window, 5 degrees centigrade, I should point out. So for Fahrenheit, a bit wider, to the best part of around about, if my memory serves me correctly, around 8 degrees Fahrenheit you could operate it. But here, now still, well, we can see no Ferraris, but we can see a Ford GT getting ready to put a lap on what will be your pro driver Tom Bryce coming through at Stavlo 2. And Bryce pulls the inside there, lets Julian Jones past, and Julian Jones taking the exit curve there, but I think even himself perhaps questioning, am I doing the right thing? Losing a bit of time to Ryan Otis, but that's understandable. That's the way that traffic does fall, and indeed, one man's gain is another man's loss, but at the same time as well, I think both will be grateful for how that's worked out as Tom Bryce carries on. As Bryce makes his way towards the bus stop chicane here, underneath the CrowdStrike billboards. Right now, the 272 driver very much on course for the Pro-Am win, and should he do so, well, based on the results at the moment, I do believe what this would do, it would be Euro Cup going the way of Glenn Bratton, but meanwhile for Tom Bryce, it would be a tie between him and Glenn Bratton for the Pro-Am crown. And in the situation of a tie break, we do it based on result countback, and it would be Bryce who would take it because he would have 4 Pro-Am wins this season to Glenn Bratton's 1, so he would be your Pro-Am champion based on result countback only. As for what is the Pro Overall Championship, well, James Logsdon with this 3rd place, with Ryan Otis leading, it would still be Logsdon. He's carved enough of a gap to be safe, and well, Logsdon would be taking that crown. And well, in the Euro Cup, meanwhile, we believe it would be Ryan Otis who would take the honours, given his run of 3 wins in 4 races, and the other result being a 2nd place, and therefore it would be enough to tip the scales in his favour. Still, we've got a bit of time left. It's not all over yet, and anything can happen for it all said and done. And well, for James Logsdon, should he bring home this Pro Crown, it would go to his Pro Crown from the Winter GR86 series, and indeed, that was back in 2025, that Winter series, where in the end he put on an absolutely stellar performance in the rather low-powered, but at the same time, a very fun to learn, but tricky to master Toyota GR86 Cup car. But he'd be very happy to have gone from one end of the pace spectrum in the Middle Pack Racing League to the other, going from one of our slower cars to one of our quickest cars, and I think that's going to put a big smile on his face come the end should he bring home this title. Still 10 minutes between him and that finish line that could seal the deal, and he won't want to become complacent at any point for now. As all drivers continue to wind this race down. Now it's gone a bit quiet, so we are really now into a bit of a race of survival and waiting to just see that all comes to the finish at this point. Should there be any mistakes, alternatively fuel tanks start to go gasping for fuel, well then we could have some late drama. As we do see Shajee Zuhair's prominent headlights making the way down towards Lake On, and he does so right now with your BMW M8 driver. The highest place of the BMWs, the other two being Jermaine Warren in 8th and Glenn Bratton in 9th, both a lap down by comparison. Well, definitely right now it's Zuhair keeping it steady, although not on the pace of the top 4 in front of him. But as Ryan Otis makes his way through the bus stop chicane for his 20th time of asking, he goes on to lap 21, and let's bring in an onboard lap, ladies and gentlemen, as he takes us around. Makes his way down towards turn number 1 as Ryan Otis here on to another lap. Sets a personal best and the fastest lap of 29.639. But can he go even quicker? Bringing his way in towards the source. Well, Julian Jones goes even faster than that at 29.618. So Otis and Jones now exchanging lap times. But exits the source in first gear. Now powers his way out the gearbox. And now in the drive, for original at it will be flat out. Let's listen in for how much lifting and coasting there'll be. Oh, goodness me, ladies and gentlemen. I think we've had a bit of a technical issue with iRacing. I'm not quite sure what's happened there. Please bear with us. We'll be right back. And well, ladies and gentlemen, we do come back, but as we do, we are not going to bring you that on-board lap there. We believe there may be a slight technical hitch with iRacing. We haven't quite seen that happen before, so for safety reasons, we are going to avoid bringing the on-board lap there just in case. We do know the 2026 Season 3 update has led to a few little bugs and discrepancies, but we're just going to play it safe there, and we'll Ryan Otis is lap too hot for this broadcast to handle, it would seem. But what is getting hot behind is that Julian Jones is catching up with only 8 minutes to go. And as they make the way on down here, well, we could still see a bit of a battle before this is all said and done. And Julian Jones staying nice and close. But as he chases after Otis, we'll have to wait and see what it's going to be. These two exchanging lap times. And, well, as we mentioned just before, we did have that technical hitch. Well, Ryan Otis did set a very impressive lap, but Julian Jones said, well, hold on, I'll go even quicker. They are battling to the 100th here in terms of lap time, but we've caught right back up to where we were race time-wise, and we're still a bit more to go, ladies and gentlemen, before this race is all said and done. It's not over yet, as Matthew Morhart is into the pit lane, and as he makes his way on down, well, for Morhart, this is not the way to go whatsoever, and Shajee Zuhair as well comes into the pit lane. Well, goodness me, we do not believe this is for penalties for instant points. We are going to double check that, but we believe, well, if it is penalty points, or instant points we should say, this is not the way they've waited to go. Matthew Morhart comes in for a quick splash and dash. Shajee Zuhair, meanwhile, comes in, and I believe, well, as they make the way on down, well, what is it all about there with regards to what's happened? So, Matthew Morhart came in, and I think he's A-OK. It was just for fuel. Shajee Zuhair, meanwhile, comes in. And as he makes his way in, it is because of black flags. So Zuhair did have a bit of an error, and that has cost him what is instant points. And Sonny Zuhair's had to take a drive-through penalty, and in the end, cost him a grand total of 26 seconds in the pit lane. But Matthew Morhart carrying on. It's a bit of an intrigue there, but Morhart running low on fuel, and Sonny needs a bit more. Perhaps for the simple reason is he's underfueled the car, thinking the race was not going to get as quick as it has done. And the fuel calculator, of course, can always be not 100% accurate because, remember, it's based on your previous 5-lap average on iRacing, the fuel calculator, if I remember correctly, although it has been adjusted in the most recent major update to be a bit more accurate. But as this race is getting quicker, well, I suspect, perhaps the calculator said we're only going to be seeing a grand total of somewhere in the region of 23 laps, when the reality is now we are going to see 24 laps. You can see 6 minutes left on the clock. We're on lap 22. We are definitely getting 3 laps in before this is over. And Julian Jones, a 2-minute 29.32, closing on Ryan Otis and going hunting as quickly as he can. And right now, well, definitely, if Otis has got a response, he might need to start lining it up, because otherwise we are going to see Julian Jones be very close right at the end, and it could lead to a very entertaining end to this race. But if we know Ryan, we know that he's definitely one of those drivers whereby he's always holding something in reserve. He's always got an ace up his sleeve somewhere. He's just got to find a way to deploy it. We're going on through at the right-hander there of what will be Malmedy right now. You can see that gap is really coming down. 4.2 seconds now already in what is that opening sector. Julian Jones taking another 4 attempts, but Otis is responding a little bit in this middle sector. Meanwhile, Matthew Morhart. Oh, what's happened to Matthew Morhart? That is off the road at Stavlo 2. He's had an error there, and as he's gone wide, well, for Morhart, it's a mistake, but hopefully it's not going to cost him any more time. Other than that, he's lost on the road. Hopefully, it's not a risk of going over the 10 instant point count. And Shajee Zuhair comes through Blanchard. He takes back 4th place and makes his way onwards. He's going to be very happy to take another place back, though I think he would have preferred to get it on the road through battling rather than simply taking it from an error. And, oh, goodness me, surely not. There's not errors coming from everybody now, because James Logsdon's made a mistake going up the hill through Urugin to Radion. So Logsdon's lost out, and Matthew Morhart, as I look at my contact booth window, is into the pit lane. That is going to be a drive-through penalty. There's no other explanation for it, unless he's made a big hit to the wall, although I suspect he won't have, given where the car was. But Matthew Morhart's had it go wrong. James Logsdon's had it go wrong. And meanwhile, at the battle at the front, well, Julian Jones had an off-track, and Jones has fallen a further 1.6 seconds back versus Ryan Otis. And well, I think Jones is starting to push a little bit too hard for the circuit, and well, the confidence is growing. He wants to try and make sure Otis doesn't get that win, but I think right now it may be all about just getting it to the end. As we take a look back at what's exactly happened to those drivers in that brief period of time. So we start off with the error for none other than what was, I do believe, Matthew Morhart. So this is Morhart making his way through Curve Paul Ferrier, and the car letting go. The rear went round, and Shahee's there doing very well throughout. They just simply waited, lifted off the throttle, and then made the decisive call when he saw which way Morhart's car was going. And well done to both for negotiating that. And we did see this for James Logsdon. A similar instance to what we saw for Jermaine Warren much earlier on. I suspect through Rouge and Radion took all the exit curb at Radion, and it went, oh, going to be a big hit to the barrier there, and then to the other side as well. It ping-ponged around, nowhere near as light and gentle as Jermaine Warren's. And is that going to see James Logsdon into the pits? We'll have to wait and see, ladies and gentlemen, as we come back to your live racing, but not before we see what happened to Julian Jones. And this was Julian Jones making his way in towards Stavlo 1. As he did so, went wide there and, well, had to bring it back on. Did so quickly, but that cost him a lot of time. And I suspect had to get the car calmed and tamed back down through Curve Paul Ferrier. And then finally got himself back up to pace. So as we come back, and now 2.5 minutes left on that clock. And as the drivers come on through, well, Ryan Otis right now definitely seeing that gap open up in his favour. I think Jones has perhaps called time on this. James Logsdon into the pit lane for repair work to the car. As I look out my contact booth window, there's the proof as he makes his way down. Those headlights not horizontally aligned anymore. One of them a bit higher than the other, you'll notice, as he makes his way onwards. And, well, the number 42 driver will be taking that fast repair. But how clear is he of Shajee Zuhair? And the answer is, I think he will be safe. He very quickly goes in and out. It's a fast repair. It's only 1.3 seconds stationary. And Shajee Zuhair will come out approximately around about 10 seconds behind James Logsdon when it's all said and done. So Logsdon right now is safe for third, and his aspirations to become your overall Drivers' Champion will remain firmly in place. And the Porsche driver right now just needs to avoid any more mistakes. But we're on our penultimate lap of the season, and as our drivers heading around, it definitely has been a race of attrition, but nobody has retired, which is brilliant to see. And in prime, it is still Tom Bryce in 7th, leading the way, and well, comfortably ahead of Glenn Bratton to the tune of approximately, I do believe, around about 1.5 minutes at the moment. And Glenn Bratton right now in 9th place, the last of our runners, but never giving in. But as Ryan Otis heads towards the timeline, new personal best, new fastest lap of the race, a 2:28.911, and well, an absolutely brilliant lap there. I don't think Julian Jones is going to have a response. I think Jones has definitely called it a day, and therefore for Ryan Otis, it's one lap between him and what will be the Euro Cup in the Pro class, but also what will be 4 wins out of 8 this season, although it will not be As things currently stand, the overall Pro Drivers' Championship, instead it will be going to this man, James Logsdon, who just needs to survive one more lap after the one he's currently on. And as for Pro-Am, well, just to repeat what we said earlier, it's still the same. Should Tom Bryce finish where he is currently in 7th and Glenn Bratton in 9th, it will be a tie for the overall Pro-Am Drivers' Championship honours, and it will be Tom Bryce, who on result countback with 4 Pro-Am wins to Bratton's 1, will be crowned your Pro-Am champion. Based on the rules that say in the result of a tie, we then do countback on wins, and then countback on second places, and we continue until we do get a championship winner. But as for the Euro Cup, it'll be Glenn Bratton, will be your Pro-Am Euro Cup champion, and a well-deserved championship crown at that. But as all the drivers come towards the very end, we'll look into Ryan Otis here, and we will see some cars off in the distance for some time. In front of him, it's very rare he gets to see a car in front of him. We'll be catching up to him there. You can see Julian Jones in the rear of the picture, and Jones right now just following. But the problem is he's just too far back to get involved. As the clock goes to 0, so it does confirm lap 24 is the last one we'll see for the season, ladies and gentlemen, here today at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. And right now, Julian Jones, I think he would like to have caught up, and what a challenging race it has been. He had the pace to match Ryan Otis, but I think in the end, pushing that Ford GT as hard as he has, and those tyres have definitely worn down, and we're seeing it in the end. For all the pace, the car just hasn't had the grip in order to be able to respond to his confidence. And on a different day, perhaps he would have been able to take the fight to Ryan Otis for the win, and what could have been his sole win of the season, but definitely has not been here today, unfortunately, for Julian Jones. So that wait for a win will carry on, because as Ryan Otis makes his way on past Taylor Bookout, who lets him go. Bookout taking it easy there in 6th place overall to go a lap down right at the end. Well, for Ryan Otis, it has been a season whereby he joined in the American Cup, and in the end took some time to really get up to speed, but he was never too far away from the podium. And as he made his way into the Euro Cup, well, he missed out in Spain, but it has been a brilliant run of victory since then. And for Ryan Otis, he heads the line. He will be your Pro Euro Cup champion with 3 wins out of 4 wins this season. It will be the victory at Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps for him, and then behind him it will be Taylor Bookout, who finishes the lap down in 6th before Julian Jones comes up through for his best drive of the season, 2nd place overall in Pro. And then we've got a bit of time before we do come to our next finish of this race, ladies and gentlemen, and well, it will next up be Tom Bryce, who will be finishing a lap down on lap 23, but still for him, this is going to feel quite special because he makes his way through the bus stop chicane now. He's not too far away from seeing that finish line, and for him, all that matters is one thing and one thing only, and that is getting it home, because in doing so, well, as he clears the bus stop chicane, he's had his mistakes, as has Glenn Bratton. It won't be the Euro Cup for him in the Pro-Am Championship, given he missed Silverstone, but it will be a 4th class winner season, and for Tom Bryce, it will be a tie at the top of the overall Pro-Am Drivers' Championship. But should results finish as they currently are, it will be on countback. He will take it. But meanwhile, we've still then got to see Jermaine Warren coming through as he makes his way through the bus stop chicane, and number 14 driver weaving his way on through. A challenging race for him, but he does see the finish line then as BMW M8 for MOP Racing. And we've got a few more drivers to come to the finish, including none other than 3rd place runner James Logsdon, as Jermaine Warren crosses his finish line and gets out of the car. But here comes James Logsdon, and for this man, for Team Bearpope, it has been a challenging day today, but many of his rivals have made mistakes, including Shajee Zuhair and Matthew Morehart. And whilst it will not be a win to end the season, would have been the cherry on the cake, but to be fair, it is going to be for him something far grander. It is going to be, as we do see him come to line, it is going to be the Pro Oval Drivers' Championship for James Logsdon, and that will follow up his 2025 Winter GR86 Cup honours in the Pro Championship. Well done to him for that 3rd place. Shajee Zuhair will come through in 4th place in the end, and well, a great season for him, no doubt about it. Then we'll have Matthew Morehart make his way to the finish line, and well, he'll be the last driver to finish on the lead lap, and it could have been a podium today, but it just wasn't to be with those mistakes. And well, I believe, ladies and gentlemen, we have unfortunately run out of replay tape, and we would have seen Glenn Bratton come home in 2nd place of those drivers in the 2nd place in the Pro-Am class. But With that, we do seem to have run out of replay tape there, and we do apologise for the slight technical hitches this broadcast has presented today. A bit unexpected there, but these things do happen. But we've seen everything we've needed to see here at Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. I don't think we've missed any of the key moments, and let's bring you those race results, subject to any steward's inquiries. And as we can see, after 60 minutes of survival of what is the fittest in the wettest conditions we've had all season, and in the dark of the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, when the Middle Pack Racing League GTE League 2026, the season finale brought to you here on iRacing, saw Ryan Otis make it his 4th win of the season, and will the privateer finishing 8.6 seconds ahead of Julian Jones. But the Ford GT drive was the equal of Otis on pace, but not the equal in terms of consistency and avoiding mistakes. James Logsdon third there for Team Bear Pope, and will in the end making sure to bring it safely on home for third, and with it the Pro Drivers Overall Championship crown head of Shajee Zuhair, the privateer who took 4th, and was chasing Logsdon late on, but could never quite get close enough to fight back against him. Matthew Morehart completed the top 5 with some mistakes, cost him a chance of the podium. He was the last to lead that finisher with Taylor Bookout a lap down in 6th, ahead of Tom Bryce, your prime winner today, and therefore making it 4 wins this season. A 50% win rate in the Pro-Am class. Well done to Tom for that. And he will be, as a result, your Pro-Am overall drivers champion. In fact, it will be countback versus him and Glenn Bratton, with him taking his 4 wins to Bratton's 1, and it will be what gets the job done. Jermaine Warren taking 8th there for MOP Racing, and then last but by no means least, Glenn Bratton completing the Pro-Am finishers, 2nd in class and 9th overall, and with it, your Euro Cup Pro-Am champion. But that's a rundown of the results, subject to any stewards' inquiries, ladies and gentlemen. But those stewards' inquiries were not required. We do believe there are no incidents reported, and therefore that wraps up our time here in the European continent and also at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps today. And that means we should now bring you your final standings for the 2026 GTE League, brought to you by the Middle of the Pack Racing League. And here we go, starting, of course, with the Euro Cup. And as we can see, there's your confirmation on screen. Ryan Otis, your Euro Cup champion, on 205 points to the 181 at James Logsdon. And Ryan Otis with 3 out of 4 wins and a 2nd place in the one he didn't win. And indeed, the only driver to be a repeat winner in the pros, both in the Euro Cup and in the overall championship. One absolutely huge result for him, no doubt about it. James Logsdon 2nd then, ahead of Shajee Zuhair, was a further 7 points behind. And then we saw Matthew Morehart go to a tie-break for 4th place with Julian Jones, but winning that tie-break based on individual finishing positions. In fact, now that I double-check, I believe, with regards to that, is it a tie-break that goes the way of Morehart? I think it is, yes, it will be a tie-break there, because they both have 1 2nd place finish, with Julian Jones taking it today and Matthew Morehart taking it all the way back at Road America. It then goes to 3rd place finishes, of which Matthew Morehart has had 1 more compared to Julian Jones, if I'm not mistaken, but I'm sure somebody will correct me if I've got that wrong. Jermaine Warren taking therefore 6th place on 116 points, ahead of Taylor Bookout. And then we did see Eric Laguy and Matt Best complete the Euro Cup Pro standings. As for in the Pro-Am, so only 2 drivers who compete in the Euro Cup rounds, and Glenn Bratton will take the Pro-Am Euro Cup honours on 149 points to 114 at Tom Bryce. And congratulations to Glenn. His consistency has shone through. Indeed, he has been an absolute story to commend in the Euro Cup. And let's give you a quick recap then of your Euro Cup winners. So there they are. Your number 3 of Ryan Otis takes the Pro Class honours there, the privateer outfit, and in the Pro Class, the 289 of Glenn Bratton. Congratulations to both of them. But of course, now, what about the biggest prizes of the season? And that will be for the overall Drivers' Championship. And here are the final standings, ladies and gentlemen. And as we can see, after 8 rounds of 8, it has been a long season, a drop score thrown into the mix. Pro-wise, on the left-hand side, James Logsdon, your champion, and indeed becomes a Pro champion for the 2nd time in just over a year, ahead of Ryan Otis by 14 points at the finish. Shajee Zuhair taking 3rd place in the end on 297 points, and then Taylor Bookout taking 4th just ahead of Julian Jones, whose last hurrah moved him into 5th place ahead of Jermaine Warren. Matthew Morehart taking 7th there ahead of Chad Henson, with Matt Best and Eric Laguy completing the top 10. And outside the top 10, not to be forgotten about, Gabriel Ferrero, Blake Phillips, Jason Landry, Edwin Offrey, and David Adeyeye. As for the Pro-Am class, We got to see Glenn Bratton in the end. Well, on top there, based on the way it's been done alphabetically. However, you'll notice it's a tie. 252 points apiece between him and Tom Bryce. But it will be based on countback for prime wins. Tom Bryce, who takes the crown because of the 4 wins to the 1 of Glenn Bratton. And Donald Seepet, meanwhile, will settle for third. Head of Mark Senegal, Roger Ganesh, Carl Peterson, and Billman da Costa. But a big congratulations to all the drivers who competed throughout the season, whether it's been for a single round or over all 8 rounds. But to recap, the biggest congratulations of them all goes to our overall Drivers' Championship winners. And in the Pro class, it is your number 42 from Team Bear Pope of James Logsdon. And in the Prime class, it is your 272 of Tom Bryce, the privateer, who in the first time in the Middle Pack Racing League's history takes the championship crown on result countback with his win advantage. Congratulations to both of them, and indeed a huge performance and a well-deserved crown for both. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to wrap up. And thank you very much for watching. And that is, of course, the Middle Pack Racing League GTE League for 2026. And if you're sat there having enjoyed, whether it's just this broadcast or the season as a whole, and perhaps you're sat there thinking to yourself, well, I'd like to know more about the Middle Pack Racing League community, or I'd like to get on the grid for a future season of racing, well, you'll definitely find no friendlier community when it comes to sim racing, operated out on the North American continent, but to be fair, open to anyone around the globe. And to join the Middle Pack Racing League community, we definitely recommend you join the official Discord, invite link available on screen, and that way you can get yourself up to speed very quickly with all the rules and regulations, the fellow drivers you'll be racing against, and of course the staff and admin members. But if you're more of a social media person, or perhaps you're just a little bit shy of joining the Discord straight away, you can follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/MOP Racing, where you can stay up to date with all the latest news and announcements and all things Middle of the Pack Racing League. But what does that mean now for next time, ladies and gentlemen? Because we bring the curtain down on what's been a brilliant season. Well, fret not, as we'll be back for even more racing action on the 1st of July 2026, and that will be for our Summer Madness series. When you're probably thinking, well, what is the Summer Madness series? Well, we do this every year now, since last year, and we always like to put something on a little bit special, and well, brace yourselves for it, ladies and gentlemen. We are referring to our Summer Madness series for 2026 as 2 Cars, 1 Cup. I can't believe I've just said that on a broadcast. Well, I've said it anyway, ladies and gentlemen, and well, that goes back to the old, let's say, the internet video, and well, you'll know what we're referring to if you're of a certain age and disposition. I'm not going to say it in full because, well, it could make this broadcast 18 rated. But yes, 2 Cars, 1 Cup, and well, it's all presented by the League of Extraordinary Sim Dentists, and some victories are just too majestic to be forgotten. But what exactly is the Middle Pack Racing League Summer Madness Series all about? Well, to put it short, it's an 8-race championship which will see drivers go around the globe to American circuits. And so what will be Sonoma, Willow Springs, the Circuit of the Americas, Mexico City. Then it will also be none other than Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, Road America, Watkins Glen, and the Indianapolis Road Course. We stay on American continents, and that will be on a weekly races from July the 1st all the way through to August 19th. But it's multi-class racing featuring the NASCAR Legends cars and the NASCAR trucks. However, what is a unique spin is the fact that you can choose to switch between either class of car throughout the entirety of the season. You're not locked into picking a particular car. You can constantly switch between the cars over the course of the season in the pursuit of the 1 Cup. Hence, 2 Cars, 1 Cup. And well, all races are 45 minutes in length, preceded by a 90-minute open qualifying session, and we will see fixed setups with limited fuel. And therefore, it's going to definitely be a series which emphasises questionable decision-making with regards to choice of cars, indeed the choice of the series name, respectful fun, indeed have fun out there, but keep it clean. Pit strategy will also be a big fault, and consistency, that will be the biggest key, as we've seen throughout the entirety of the Middle Pack Racing League GTE League for 2026. And, well, all those races, some absolutely incredible circuits, some fan favourites, and some staples of American racing throughout the American continent, and we definitely love to see you join the grid if you're up for it, to see what you can do in the NASCAR Legends cars on the NASCAR trucks. And remember, 2 cars available, 1 Cup being competed for, and you won't want to miss it over the summer season. Oh, it's going to be an incredible season to race in, and every victory will be so majestic you won't want to forget about it. So make sure you get yourself signed up for 2 Cars, 1 Cup, and that'll be getting underway on the 1st of July 2026. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, we have been the Middle Pack Racing League. This has been our GTE League, and what a league it has been, where it has been from February all the way through to June of 2026. We'll also also see what will be our autumnal series come back later on this year. So stay tuned for that, as well as the Summer Madness, which we just talked about. And well, until then, ladies and gentlemen, I have been your host and commentator, Paul Walsh. Huge thank you to the Middle Pack Racing League for giving me the opportunity to host and commentate on the GTE League. It has been absolutely incredible, but the curtain must come down, and indeed, champions must be crowned, and a huge congratulations to our overall champions of Pro, James Logsdon, and in Pro-Am, Tom Bryce, and also to our Cup champions, of course, and well, none other than the US Cup are James Logsdon and Jermaine Warren, Pro and Pro-Am respectively, and in the Euro Cup, of course, the crown's going to Glenn Bratton in Pro-Am, and in Pro, Ryan Otis. But with that, it is time for us to say farewell for now. Remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, as always, ladies and gentlemen, of every Paul Walsh production, remember most importantly, to stay on track. Good night.